Okay, Roger, once again, Mud Fossil University, and I apologize in advance for my rantingness in this video. Excuse me, and it relates to a level of frustration. But before I get into my evidence about the ether that I am going to be speaking about, and the light waves that propagate through it and create the magnetic fields, and they're actually shown in the ether. Now, I'm going to show you the evidence I have to start with, and then I go into my presentation of, how the experts look at this and why they won't look at this. But I'm telling you right now, this right here, all of these little dots are polarized ether. It's AE ether. And what it is they are particles that are in everything. They literally allow for electricity to flow and light. And they are in all of the vacuum of space is these particles. They don't really interact much until they're slammed into by something, and in this case it's a light wave. Now I am going to show you that is a standard nice little happy wave going through the air, and now we're going to go find one that's getting sucked like a bomb through there. Alright, this is light accelerated. What you have here is two pins that are steel pins. I believe they were steel, but they're cylinders, and they create a restriction here that what it does is it makes this wave compress and accelerate and create its own enormous magnetic field around itself. There's a magnetic field here because of the particle. Now that particle is crushing its field, and now we're just down into only the particles. You see that? And with no field any longer, because the field is being squinched. As it comes through that Venturi, it accelerates and atomizes into extremely chaotic particles. And then they step down at a certain quantum distance after the Venturi, it appears from what I'm seeing, and then they eventually take on their own normal disk shape like this over here. And we can see these dots in this circular pattern. You see those dots? I don't know if you can see that in what you're looking at, but it's very clear here. And that is the additional field setup from this violent electronic interaction. It sets up a field around its own self, backwards. That is not normal, but that's because of this high increased energy. Now let's see if we can find the chaos one. Light chaos. Now, this is looking down, straight down from the accelerator, and we can see as it comes out this blobby plasma-ish stuff, and then it steps down into a less energetic, and then less energetic, and less energetic. And you can see these are crossing each other's pathways, they're interacting, and that will end up creating light that is actually, let's see if I can find it, light mini disc here. There it is. What happens, well here, let me back up a second because this will confuse you maybe. This is the red shower. Alright, now, that is the accelerator. The light is coming at us. These are the particles. You can almost see each one of them attached to a light ray. Now this one, however, is really powerful. You see these are the disc at the head of the light ray. It appears that each one of these rays it creates at the head of it one of these discs, which makes sense because it's creating that magnetic field. And these little dots, those are what they call PN junctions in the semiconductor industry. It's where a positive section meets a negative section, and because these are ether particles, they have a positive and a negative, just like all particles. There's nothing that has just a single positive or a single negative. It does not exist. Every particle has both, and it appears that the negative has precedence. The negative takes over, and it is in a ratio approximately of 1 to 1.0002, I believe, somewhere in that area. So there is like a 0.0002 increase negatively in the mass of all matter. That I can't account for, but it doesn't seem to be the way. And that accounts for all the interactions between matter. And it accounts for these particles that are creating their own little magnetic field, and that is identical what happens in a wire. If you took a wire and you ran it straight through there and then ran the electricity through, wherever that electricity was going, you would see this. And they can do that with iron filings right now. And they stack up the same way, plus minus, plus minus. That's how magnetic particles make circles. They don't just go one piece of iron. They're plus minus between each little particle. And that is what you're seeing here. Only these are the ether particles that surround everything in everywhere. And anything that's conductive has particles in them that can flow through them and make magnetic fields. And the air is loaded with ether, and outer space is loaded with ether. And as matter goes through there, it interacts with that ether. And it creates heat and light and all that stuff. And that particle there is going to be able to step down. And I'm going to show you the step down right now. It's what I had a second ago, that mini particle. All right, now this is the most interesting one. It shows everything in one shot. It's all here. We've accelerated the light. That was that high-speed white particle that I showed in the flood of disks before. It is coming through here in some form of an accelerated high-energy mass that interacted with this field, this particle's field. It might even hit it head-on. I don't know. But I can see what it did do is it stepped off a light trumpet, which is a particle of a disk. That, in my mind, it might expand to be that size. I don't know. But I can see right now it has stepped away from this particle, and that particle is now taking on its own field. That's what I'm seeing. If you see something different, I'd like to understand how you see it differently. That's what I'm seeing, is that particle has stepped away. Now, these particles are light particles. That and a light, an electron, is really, they don't even consider it mass. It's almost not even taken into account as mass, and it is extremely necessary to take it as mass. It comes to like 0.00055 atomic mass units, something like that, 0.00. It's out there. But it was always considered to be the most primary of all the electronic particles. Then they talk about neutrinos. Well, maybe that's a neutrino. It looks like the little squiggly looking thing that they showed in the neutrino pictures from the, I think it was 1970 or something, from a collider effect they had done. All right, I'm just going to start this off so that you have some idea where I'm going. I'm claiming that these circles here are ether. They are magnetic fields displayed in ether. This white particle here is literally an electron. It's literally a light particle. And it's coming through an accelerator that we use, a Venturi accelerator, out into space here, polarizing all the ether. You see these little whitish looking dots? That's all being affected by this polar field, but it's creating these rings exactly identical to what it does in a wire. And they do it with magnetic particles, iron filings, and they go one to another, one to another, one to another. Well, this is light, and the ether is being positive, negative, positive, negative, positive. That's a p-n junction created as the particle moves at a high velocity through this ether, creating these magnetic fields identical to electricity moving in a wire. There is no difference whatsoever. And we believe that we may have actually photographed these electrons in their trails. You see that? That's where it comes out of the accelerator here. And, you know, they spray out this way and spray out that way. You'll see this or have seen it. And these are the particles that end up being seen. And there it is right there. It looks like the old atomic signature in the 60s. I believe it looks to me like it's some form of a torus. And there's such a thing as capacitive reactance and inductive reactance. I'm not going to get into it, but it works on choke fields. And the neck of a torus is a choke. So you have a capacitance and a choke, a capacitance and a choke, and that can create this effect, I believe. I'm just guessing. All right, and then we see this in red as well, and this appears to show up for 2 light waves. And you can see this. This is actually a better way to look at this. This is the accelerator. It's coming out of here in that white, blobby, blurry mess that we saw in the chaos. Well, you will see it in chaos. Then it steps down. Then you get these 2 waves that show up the actual particle. Then it steps down into its light disks. So I'm saying that I have absolute 100% proof of the things I'm saying, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I have much more about this. So stay tuned, and I get a little kind of, you might call it nasty. I don't mean to be nasty to anybody, but I'm frustrated as hell. I got to be honest with you. Everything I have presented is just literally going to waste of time. I don't think I've gotten any legitimate comments on anything. Certainly none from anybody that can challenge me or tries to challenge me or attempts to challenge me. It doesn't happen. And I would love to have it happen. I name names. There's Hawkins. I would love to hear him try to discount the things I'm saying about the things that are in space. Comet 67P, 100% organic. All the things that are in the Earth, no geologist will speak to me about the mud fossils, which I discovered and had DNA tested. And now Max Planck and Harvard agrees it's all in the mud, and there's no such thing as mud that doesn't contain DNA now. But everything else, it's just all, sooner or later they're going to see this, and somebody will make up some story how they figured it out. But they're never going to get it right, I wouldn't imagine, because they never seem to. So, and see, I told you I was going to get nasty, and I did. I got a little nasty, so that's just the way I feel. But I'd like to have, I'm getting very friendly if I can get some discussion and some discourse of legitimate discussion of what I present, rather than, oh, the guy's a nut. Who cares? It just looks like it could be anything. And that's what I heard from all of them, literally all of them. That's just a fact. And so, as far as I'm concerned, nobody cares. That's the source of my frustration. All right, this is a Facebook post I did on science mysteries at Mud Fossil University. Now, this right here is the magnetic lines of flux around the particle, which is the particle spinning through space, creating these lines of flux. And these spots and these dots, all that wrap around this field, are the polarized ether, plus to minus, plus to minus, plus to minus. There is no other way to create these circles. You have to bridge those circles with something. They're not just nothing. They are particles arranged in magnetically attracted to each other in a circle, and this is the particle spinning away from the accelerator right here. Now, this is what a wire looks like. This is what happens inside of a wire. The conduction is this way, the field is this way, and it travels along with the conduction. It's just the way it works. And you don't see the dots in here, but I show the dots in my pictures extremely clearly. You see that right there? Those are the dots. That is the wrapping around. Those are the spinning around. The particle is coming through space, and we're seeing it wrapped by its own field, creating, and these are the dots that are the plus to minus ether that is polarized as that particle creates and induces a magnetic field surrounding the particle trajectory. That's what it is. Now, You see this particle right here is an extremely energized particle, that white one. It's above the speed of the others. The others are in different frequencies as well. The different colors indicates different frequencies. Densities of this disk indicate different angular momentum, which is power, really, is what energy. Now, this is a standard wave just coming through the air, pulsed red laser, but you can see that it does affect the ether that's all everywhere, but it really interacts with a wave-like effect. Now here's a wave that is accelerated into a Venturi accelerator. There's two metal pins that draw it in, and there's no other option. It has to increase in speed, and it has to increase in power, and it crushes. And when it comes through the accelerator, it steps back down to its normal speed. And you can see all the particles are polarized. They're polarized. And in a field, they become plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. In here, do you see this? That is a wave field from this collision, this chaos. It's sending out a huge distortion. And that's just what happens when particles are accelerated. Now, remember I showed you that one white particle? Here it is here. It's coming through, and it's so powerful that it is interacted. It has a confined magnetic field, like a black hole magnetic field. I don't know what to say. It seems to have, it's a powerful, it's spinning or doing something much more powerful than these other waves. It's more excited. How that interacts within the nature of its own particle space, I can't say at this point. But I can see what happens is that wave is coming out of here more intense than these other ones. It interacts with this magnetic field of this particle's wave, creates its own new step-down magnetic field, not as this blurry white intense field. It comes down to a less powerful field. And then it also gives off a piece of its field. So light, and I'm saying that has to also be a particle inside that. That's a particle in there. So that particle is not the size of these particles. It's a little bitty particle. So waves, electron, and I'm calling these electrons. Light particles, electrons. I'm going to call them electrons because that's what's being stripped off of complete matter at the sun or wherever it's being vibrated so intently that the electrons in their outer orbitals get thrown away like a rocket ship going into space. They achieve escape velocity and they spin off, and that's what we're seeing here. And as they spin through space, they create this magnetic field around them identical to what happens in a wire. And here's what happens in a wire. You see this? They know this happens. The current goes this way and the field just grows around it. It's not a big mystery, but they've never seen it before, and now I'm showing it in its most simple, basic, easy to understand way. And I'll show you it in a number of pictures right now, and then I'll wrap it up, because I've shown this dozens and dozens of times. And there's a whole new understanding of energy here. This doesn't stop right here and oh, that's it and have a nice day. No. Goes much deeper than that, because there's no such thing as a neutron. No, nobody's ever seen a neutron rolling around on the floor. They're not neutral whatsoever. Not whatsoever. And the nature of matter is it is positive and negative, and it's always a little bit more negative. And because it's a little bit more negative, the negativeness of everything is attracted to the positiveness of everything, because you have a positive and you have a negative. The negative just exceeds it a little bit. So the positiveness draws all the negatives, which is everything, and the excessive negativeness of it expels everything to a certain distance, which is a quantum distance, very close. And you see the tractor beam magnets prove this very, very, very clearly. Let's see what Miku has to say.
Many physicists had a heart attack when we got news from Geneva, Switzerland, that Einstein might be wrong. all hell broke loose in the physics community. Every physicist I know is taking a position on this hot topic because relativity is the foundation of modern physics along with the quantum theory. Now what they found was, if you take a beam of neutrinos from the atom smasher in Geneva, Switzerland, shoot the beam through the mountains from Switzerland to Italy over a distance of 454 miles, the neutrinos outraced a light beam by a distance of 60 feet. 60 feet over a distance of 454 miles. Well, that doesn't sound like much, but to a physicist, this is a disaster.
I've shown this over and over and over. You could do this inside your garage if you want. That's what Rod Warren did. Rod did the... there's a backstory to this whole thing, and we'll get into it at some point. But look, you could easily accelerate light. That's light being accelerated through a Venturi. And because it's entering a Venturi, it restricts it. There's two round metal cylinders. And when it hits here, that wave has to crush. It's identical to what happens to water. Water in a hose or gasoline in a carburetor. It's a Venturi. It's a restriction. The restriction there's no other possibility then for the thing that's going through the restricted area to speed up. It has to. There's no question it has to. And when it speeds up, it atomizes. And that's the atomization, and that's the step down of the quantum going back to its more or less stable state within the ether. And it's all about ether here. And everything has to be turned around and started from scratch again. And Mikio there, he understands we got a problem here. Nobody else will step up. All right, this is the nature of matter. This is a magnet. It has a positive and a negative to it. This is a magnet. It has a positive and negative to it. But they have arranged the positives and negatives in such a way as to create a net negative field. And that is how nature does it. And here, just watch what happens here. All right, look at it, boom. It's stuck there. And it's going to stay stuck there at an exact distance. That's the quantum distance that they always talk about, quantum. That is the quantum distance. And it is in between these two little negatives that keep it focused there. He can twist it and it will stay there. He can shake it and it will try to stay there. It does not want to leave that particular location. You can bounce him, and what he's doing now is creating what we would call heat. And once it gets thrown out so violently, there it is. That's light. You just saw heat right there, and that's light. And as soon as it bounces off and leaves, that's light. It's Roger, Mudfossil University, and today we are going to destroy modern physics, which should have been destroyed over 100 years ago. They should have stayed with the reality of physics, which is ether. According to ancient and medieval science, ether, also spelled ether, and also called the quintessence, and it is the quintessence of excellence. It is a veritable fulfillment of everything, and it is the medium which everything exists in. It is the material that fills the region of the universe above the terrestrial sphere. Now, that's what they said in ancient times, and I agree with that 99%. Ether is the particles that exist in everything, and including the terrestrial sphere, and they are manifested as electric currents. Electric currents and light and ether are all identical. And I will explain this, and I will show it to you. I'll show it to you right now, before we even bother to finish this. Here's the truth of what ether is. It's right there. This is light, and light is a particle, it's an electron flowing through space so fast, exactly like in a wire, it creates a magnetic field around it, and that is the magnetic field. And that magnetic field is in these circular patterns, and every dot on that magnetic field is a plus-minus interface. Plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. That's they're polarizing the ether. And the ether is within this space, but it is becoming completely polarized. And I have other ones that show space with only disks, and the rest is polarized and seen in random polarity because it is not part of the field that surrounds the spinning particle. And now I don't know if the particle is truly spinning or not, because I'm seeing that this is the trail of the particle, and this is the disk it's leaving behind, showing these dots. And that, so it may be just straight through the center. I always thought it was spinning, but I think now I'm wrong. I think it may be just that particle moving straight through the center, and I have seen that in other shots we took. And I'll show you that right now. It's in the green ones. All right, this one here, you can actually see the particle. So I'm saying it's coming through this and spinning. Well, it doesn't appear to be spinning. It's just traveling through space at such a velocity and has such a magnetic component to it that it polarizes the space that it flows through, and we can see it, plus, minus, plus, minus. These are all PN junctions. In the semiconductor industry, wherever a positive meets a negative, they call it PN junction. And that's what those are. And what we're seeing is that particle traveling through space, just like that. That's what ether is. And it's been discounted for 100 years because of the silly science that Einstein brought to the world and the rest of the people in that era. At the end of the 1800s, and right here, look. The concept of ether was used in several theories to explain several natural phenomena, such as traveling of light and gravity. That's exactly what I'm showing you. And you can see it. Okay, so now listen to this. So in the late 19th century, that's the end of the 1800s, towards the crazy people period, the physicists postulated that ether permeated throughout the space, and it does, providing a medium through which light could travel in a vacuum, which it does. But evidence for the presence of such a medium was not found in the Michelson-Morley experiment. And thus, let's forget about the ether. There's no such thing. Interpreters mean there is no such luminous ether exist. That is nonsense. So they just abandon it. And as soon as one guy says it, like Einstein, it is over. There is no more conception, no more thinking. Done. You have to conform to his speed limit of light, which is also nonsense. And we have accelerated light. It is very easy to do. Here it is right here. Hold on. This is light here, sucked right through a Venturi. That's a disk accelerated. There's not a human being alive could tell me that that's not happening. Now, secondarily, the field effect of the particle is seen in the disk, and you can see this is creating enormous field disruptions and all kinds of patterns of ether showing up in its field. And these are the sort of particles that are in the field, but they're not fully in that curve. They haven't been taken over. So this is really right in here. It doesn't, close to here, it doesn't seem to be setting up. It's setting up way out waves like here. Normally that doesn't happen. Normally they're pretty close to the core, and this would be the core, and it's setting up its own pattern of interference and polarization of the ether that exists everywhere, because it is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's out in space. It's and it's inside of the Earth too. It is the flowing electrons of the Earth. It is the electrical component that can move. It's not the positives, you know, the protons, and they call them neutrons. They're really negative particles. The protons and the negative particles that are in the nuclear mass, they don't move as much as the surrounding electrons, and that's what light is. It's very, very obvious. This one appears to be the actual particle moving in a straight line. I always thought they created this spin, but as I see, looking back on my research, that this appears to be the actual particle. You can see it's this effect here, and it's heading off this way. And what it's doing is, as it's passing through space, it's creating a magnetic lines of flux, but it's going so fast that they do a shock wave. Really, it's almost like a shock wave that a jet fighter creates when it goes through the air. I mean, it's virtually the same thing. And what it's doing is, you can see the ether particles are becoming polarized, and it creates this ring. Now, if we were looking at it from this way, looking down, we're looking down in a different configuration. Looking from this direction, I believe we would see those spinning disks, and I believe we would see them with the little dots all around them, like in the red shots. All right, these appear to be the actual particles. And they're coming out of the accelerator. They spin off in a chaos for a little bit, and then they turn into particles, and like stopping almost, and then they go into their spinning disks to create the polarized ether. All right, in this shot, we're looking straight into the accelerator, and the disks are more or less coming at us in sort of a variety of ways. Now, I believe that's one continuous spinning particle. I mean, a particle that is just going through here, and that is the magnetic field that it sets up in the ether. And these dots are the dots that are the PN junctions between these set up particles and creating polarity, plus minus, plus minus, plus, and then that creates the disk around them. This is fully understood. It's not something that I'm making up. They know that a wire, if this was a wire, it would create the exact same pattern around that wire in a magnetic field in iron filings. And the iron filings are going plus minus, plus minus, plus minus. They're little tiny bar magnets is what's happening. So it's the exact same setup. Now, something you want to watch for, and I've done this a zillion times, but I'm going to say it again. This one here, this is a particle that has come through the accelerator in an extremely high energy state. It must have penetrated here in such a manner that it accelerated to a point of extreme density. And that's all I can say. That's all I can say. It's much more powerful than these. It's going faster, and it's got more mass. That's what I'm going to show you, I believe. This is that high energy particle that I showed you, the white one that came through amongst all the other ones that looked normal. Now, you can see what happened here. It's impacted this field. This field has impacted this field. And when it did that, it took on its own field of like this, but it gave off a portion of its field, of its energy, of its particle. I can't understand fully the nature of what I'm seeing here. However, one thing I am certain of is that it is now separating a portion of its original power into this. And I call that a mini light trumpet. And I don't know the nature of it specifically, but I would assume that it is a mini one of those. It's exactly identical to that, only it is a portion of that. So, to my mind, I have shown that light can be accelerated. That's very clear. Light is creating these fields in the ether that is the particles that exist throughout all space. And they're just random floating particles that are literally light, just drifting around. And as light passes through it, it polarizes it and creates these patterns. And that's what I'm seeing, and I can't think of anybody that can dispute that. And if you can, well, fine, I'd like to hear it. All right, here's what you want to do is get up on here, Mud Fossil University. We just went over 20,000 a couple days ago. We're up to 20,758. Get up there, sign up, subscribe, ring the bell, say, I want to listen to this. I want to hear this stuff. There's got all kinds of stuff on everything. So it's not just physics, and it's not just mud fossils, and it's not just our ancient history. It's everything. But here's Einstein destroyed physics. He did. He destroyed physics. E equals mc squared it's not even right mathematically. He said that light has no mass. If it has no mass, it has no energy. By his own equation. Nobody's paying attention to anything, and they're so scared of going against Einstein. Hubble has to say, oh, well, the whole universe must be stretching because light never slows down. Well, that's silly. Light goes fast, it goes slow. That's just not right. And to get down on your knees for this silly statement that light has to go a certain speed, that's it, case closed. It doesn't make any sense at all. Well, it's total nonsense. And it ruined science for 100 years. And that's why you got all this dark, spooky, entangled this and that. Well, light is nothing more than dark energy and dark matter in the vacuum of space, not interacting with nuclear particles, in transit to do its job. It is ether. The ancients knew this, and we'd say, oh, they're silly people. Well, come up here and find out where the silly people still collect. And listen to this, light. This is something this amazing. That light disc hit the ground just like a platter hitting the ground. It's time to take another look at the reality that we have been denied. Magnetic lines of flux, polarized. I got another article on that. So come to Mud Fossil University. Sign up. Come on. We got to get some more guys. We got 20,000 and a little more. We're going to go 30,000 quick. All right. So come on up there. Tell people to go up there, have something to talk about, discuss it. If you know, don't argue, don't fight, but just discuss it. Say, what do you think about this? Well, I don't know, the guy's crazy. Well, let's see what he had to say. Maybe I am crazy. So I don't care, whatever you want. Just, and I'm not charging anybody anything, so you're not losing anything. So that's I'd like to have some other people discuss things with me on a rational basis, and nobody seems to want to get involved in the actual commentary of the things that I present. It's always some silly thing that they're trying to attach to my research. So, and I'd love to see MIT or Yale or Harvard or any of those people discuss these things with me on an intellectual basis, in an intelligent basis. Oh, you're just silly. You got to read the books we read. Well, no, you got to read the books I read. You should read the books I write. You should read the papers I write and see the documents and the evidence that I can present. That's what you need to do, my friends. All right, I read all your books. They're not right. All right, so come up here and find out what is right. And then attack me. Come after me. I got no problem with that because I've come after you. And you have stayed away, and you're all hiding. Geologists, physicists, all of you. All right, so it's time to address the things I am saying, challenging me. I'm happy with that. I have no problem whatsoever. None whatsoever. I have DNA tests, I have chemistry, I have anatomists, I have CAT scans, I have specimens coming out of my ears. All right, so all I'm asking you to do is either go about your business and don't care about reality, but if you care about reality, you're going to have to address this reality because this is the real reality. All right, so that's it.